I'm delighted to welcome Vodka John today. He goes by other names, but I find it simplest to call him Vodka John, a vodka baron who represents 2 premium vodkas, as well as several different beers and some spirits. And he's going to do a wonderful presentation today for his investment side for Multiculture Bevco. But if you're lucky enough to stay around later, he will also be bringing you the history of vodka with samples. So please, warm welcome to John.
Can everybody hear me okay? The microphone's gone? Very good, thanks. Thanks, Jess, for introducing me. You might be wondering why I'm here today. We've gone through the process a bit, but one of our investors, actually, who couldn't be here today, is a member of your group. So we already have a shareholder who's a member of your group as well. But he suggested that I should really come out and talk with the York Angels, which is, of course, a very well-known group in the region. So that's what we're doing here today. What I wanted to talk to you about was a little bit about our business, which is really the vodka business. We do have some other products that we represent, but it's all about vodka. This is sort of jokingly, this is actually comes from an original promotion we did about 4 or 5 years ago, where we actually invited the public to become part of our shareholder group through a contest. We call it Become a Vodka Baron, kind of tongue-in-cheek. So this thing kind of stuck with us ever since then. So we end up like various magazine articles, which I think Catherine brought along, you can see later on, where they talk about us as the Vodka Barons, which is kind of funny. But hopefully one day that moniker might fit. But a little bit about vodka. You've probably noticed vodka now is the world's #1 spirit. It's very profitable and it's a lot of fun. You can imagine being in this business opens all kinds of doors to things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. But what most importantly, for us at least, was the outrageous valuations and astonishing buyout costs or buyout prices that a lot of smaller brands have gotten in the past. And this is what really allowed us to, or what really caused us to focus on our vodka brands as our main part of our business. Originally, we wanted to be an agency, but we changed into a focus on our own brands because we realized that is where the real possible wealth creation is going to happen in our business. So our 2 brands that were already mentioned, Zirkova and Slava, some of you might have seen them in the liquor store or maybe already tried them. Those are the brands that we wholly own. So we have the trademarks, we own those things. We also distribute those through provincial liquor boards, primarily, of course, being the LCBO, the largest buyer of liquor in the world, but also in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And we're just about ready to launch in the US and 2 other countries that we're in the middle of talking to right now. So just, you know, we're at the business is established, but we're really at the beginning of that big growth phase. The other products that were mentioned, we also have the distribution rights for Carlsberg's beers from Ukraine and Canada and Krimsekt Sparkling Wines. So you can see a common theme here that everything's sourced in Ukraine. So sourced in Ukraine, sold in Canada. But again, the vodkas being the main focus. I don't know if anybody saw the episode of Dragon's Den from way back when that we were on. It was aired in 2010. And then they did one of those follow-ups on us a couple of years later. The Dragon's Den episode, people always ask, is it as stressful as it looks? No, it wasn't. We actually taped for 90 minutes, which got cut down to 3. And when I saw the 3 minutes, it looked really stressful. It wasn't to actually be there, but by the time that got edited, it was quite interesting. They made it look like things were desperate, and without the dragon's help, we would get into deep, deep trouble. And it was all dramatic. And then 2 years later, they did the follow-up episode and tried to make it look like we were ridiculously successful, and the dragons had totally blown it for not being invested. But you know, of course, neither of those was exactly right, but it makes for good narrative. But most importantly, it makes for fabulous PR. It's been re-aired about 12 times. It still reruns every now and then. So every time that happens, we can notice website hits go up and suddenly a little bit more sales here and there. So it was definitely a great move from that point, and it was really fun to be on the program, to be honest with you too. One of the questions we always get is like, wow, but there's so many vodkas. You know, why does the world need 2 more vodkas? I feel more sorry for the people in the wine or the beer business because that is vastly more competitive. But when you look at vodkas right now, they're all about image, this, that, or the next thing. They're all targeted at essentially the same people. And when you drink vodka, and you'll have the chance to try this later on, you'll actually get to experience what our vodkas are like in a mixed drink or straight up and just notice the difference. But nobody's really designed a vodka for what most people use it for in this market, which is to mix. The vast majority of people mix their vodka with a juice, and it usually ends up tasting a little bit sour at first. And it doesn't really bring out all the flavors that you want in that. So a great cocktail vodka, not just a vodka that is great for sipping straight, which is not what most people do with it. So what we have done is we've created a couple of brands that have really unique abilities. Slava, when we put it up against any other vodka straight, it always ends up being the most preferred vodka in the blind test. And you'll get a chance to experience that for yourself. And oh, and by the way, if there's anyone here who can't stay till 6:30 or for the 6:30 presentation, let us know and we'll do a little private little demo on the side, because for everyone who gets involved with our company, a lot of the time the quality of those products and the sheer demonstrable superiority of them is one of the things that really gets them interested. So we don't want to do it in a big group because we're going to be doing it later. But we also do this thing with the Caesar Challenge, where we try Zirkova and a Caesar and demonstrate that too. But we did have an interesting experience. So, you know, if you don't, this was in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Let me see if I can get this clicked. Oops, hang on. We'll click on there. Oops, I turned it off. Oh, can't really hear it. Oh, that's all right.
You need to turn that up.
Oh, sorry, I'll just rewind this here, hang on. Well, it doesn't really matter. I'll just skip through this. What they're doing a blind taste test with Slava. This is on CTV morning in Saskatoon when we went out there to do a charity event. And Stephanie Massicott in the middle had done this earlier, and she tried Slava and Grey Goose. It was hilarious because she tried the Slava, it's like, very good. And then she tried the Grey Goose. We called it a very expensive vodka on the thing, and her face all screwed up. She's like, what? Couldn't believe it. So he does the exact same thing and comes up with the same solution. So every time we do this, and if we can catch it on film, which is just golden, people really can't believe the difference. They expect the expensive, super expensive vodka to be better, and it's really great vodka, but the problem is after Slava, nothing tastes good. So of course, you'll find out later. Some of the things about the products themselves, they're both quadruple distilled and what's called center cut spirits, so very, very, very high quality. What's really neat too is that we actually make them, you know, people are like, why is a Canadian company making your vodka in Ukraine? Well, where we make it is actually the birthplace of vodka, which lends itself to some good authenticity marketing as well. It was actually part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth at the time, and you'll learn that in the history of vodka tonight. But when we say from the birthplace of vodka, we really mean it. It's literally the region in which we make it. It makes better mixed drinks with Zirkova, which is the application most people use their vodka for. And in the case of Slava, beats everything else straight up. Not surprisingly, anytime we've entered into awards, we've ended up winning them. In 2011, we put Zirkova in the World Spirits Competition. It got a gold medal. And then next year, we did it with Slava, also a gold medal. Of course, because of the price on Zirkova, it also got a Best Buy award from the Beverage Testing Institute in Chicago, which is the organization that Grey Goose built its quality reputation on. So those are good medals to have. A little bit about the vodka market. Worldwide, it's almost 400 million cases. These are 9-liter standard cases, about 50 billion in sales. In the US, it's about 62.5 million cases, and in Canada, about 4.5, close to 5 million cases now. And you know, so you see there's a big chunk of that missing is in the vodka world. Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine account for almost a little over half of the world's vodka market. And most of the brands there you would never have heard of. They're totally regional brands. So regional brands are a big deal. There's only a couple of global brands. Growth until quite recently in North America was ridiculous. It was growing at 6% a year to the point where vodka became the #1 spirit in Canada, overtaking Canadian whiskey. It's since slowed down a bit, which is only reasonable. It couldn't keep going, otherwise it would take too much share away from the rest of the category. So in terms of what we see as our market potential, and this is in 3 different areas, Canada, the United States, and international, meaning various other countries, we see about 375,000 case potential, and that's where we've divided it up on the top graph there, with a big chunk of that still coming from Canada, because we do have a focus here. So it looks like a disproportionate share in Canada, and it is. I mean, this is where we're based with the liquor boards. We're already in them, so there's an ability to grow there. In terms of our business plan for the next 5 years, this is realized potential. So we're looking at, in the business plan, only about 35–40% of total market potential being realized by the time that the business plan numbers run out. So those will be the numbers upon which we base all of our financial projections, with you see an even bigger chunk of that coming from Canada, pretty close to half. We were talking about, you know, the different vodkas in the market and the price spectrum and where they are. The bulk of the market is down here in the lower price area. Pretty much everything from, if you're in the shelf, $24 to $26. And that's about 80% of the market. Then you have this area, the super premiums at the top, which is like $40 plus. And in the middle, Slava used to be on its own. It's now been joined by other brands. But that is a good area of growth as well. So this is the bulk of the market. This is what's growing. This is kind of going sideways. So where we're positioned is partly where the volume is and where the growth is in terms of those two things. In terms of where customers come from, really Smirnoff and Absolut are the two, and Grey Goose are really the only three real global players. And even in that case, the bulk of their sales are still, in the case of Grey Goose, still in the US. About half in the US for Absolut, believe it or not, only about a third for Smirnoff. But our target is really here. And this is taking people away from the brand that they're into, because there's not a tremendous amount of brand loyalty. It's more about momentum and trust, and substituting them to something that's the same price or a little bit less and demonstrably superior, or trading them up. A lot of these people were not willing to go all the way up to $40 plus, so we trade them up to something in the middle. And there's a smaller number of people who are smart, want to save money, get something just as good or better, and actually spend less. A little bit about the target market of ours. What we've chosen to do, and this is quite recent, we've decided to target young women. And there's a reason for that. One is nobody's doing it. Almost everyone is targeting men between the ages of 25 to 40. That's the target market for almost all vodka brands. But the biggest growth area is women 19 to 30. That's who's drinking vodka now. It is unusual when you think about beer or whiskey, it's all men. Vodka is increasingly women, about 60% now. My estimate is by the end of the decade, will be more like 65, 70% of all vodka being consumed by women. And guess who's going to be doing it? It's these ones. So looking at them, they also mostly mix. So mostly drinking cocktails. Well, if you have a vodka that works better in cocktails and makes demonstrably superior cocktails, well, there's a really good appeal to that particular target market. So in total, this is the total number who drink with a mix. But with women, it's far more concentrated. It's more like 89%. So that's what they use vodka for. So we have a product that suits them very well. Another interesting piece for people in Canada, 25% of all vodka in Canada goes in a Caesar. So when we talk about the Caesar challenge and demonstrating that a Caesar you can actually make a difference in a Caesar. Most people don't think it matters what kind of vodka you put in it. Most of the time it doesn't. But Zirkova makes a better tasting Caesar. So that will be another target market. So we have, and of course we're not going to forget about our Ukrainian Canadians. There's 1.2 million of them in Canada. So there's still a bit of an ethnic component, which has been our entire component up until recently. But it will remain a part of it, but it's certainly not a market we intend to turn our backs on. A little bit about myself. My background, people wonder what the heck I'm doing in the vodka business because I'm an engineer by background. But I did live in Ukraine for 5 years. We started up a management consulting company there, and that with my wife, Catherine, who waved to everybody. So Catherine is not only my partner in life, but partner in business too, and has been since we started EBS back in the late 90s, and that worked out to be rather successful. It was the second largest private consulting company in Ukraine by the time we were done with it. It's still there. And when we came back to Canada, one of our clients was the breweries that you saw up on the screen, so they asked us to help them get into this market. So that's how I ended up in this business. So now I can say I've got 13 years in the beverage alcohol business. I still think of myself as a newbie because we came along out of nothing and started up into this. I had to bring people in that knew something about the beer business. I didn't know anything about beer or vodka or anything like that. But now I guess I can say I know a thing or two about it. We also have some really great advisors who've been working with us for a while. Aldo Kandari, who owns, well, obviously Kandari Marketing Group, Advertising Group, is a shareholder and as well our guru when it comes to marketing. Phil Wilson, who's been chair of our advisory board from the beginning. Phil's been retired for about a decade now, but he was a top guy at BMO back in the day. And also Glenn Yanamitsu, who was chair of the CMC, the Management Consultants Group in Canada, but has a company called Next Strategic Consulting, and so he's been working with us as well. He also has a title which is unusual, the Entrepreneur in Residence at the Ivy Business School. He used to be on faculty, but now they call him the Entrepreneur in Residence, which he doesn't live there. I don't know why they call him that. But, oh yes, and BDC, I'm sorry. We had an investment from the Business Development Bank about 3 years ago, and as a result, what I didn't anticipate was the amount of partnership they bring to the table as well. And they've been working, in fact, they introduced us to Glenn. So they've been really great partners to have as well. This is another reason why we focus on our vodka brands. It's not just about building the value. The gross margins are significantly better than they are in the products that we represent. The question is, why do we even do this? Remember that market, the 1.2 million Ukrainian Canadians? This helps us own that market for vodka. So somebody asked us to set up a beer garden, and we set up a beer garden with vodka posters everywhere. So it's sort of a bait and switch, if you want. But also gross margins are vastly better in vodka. They're well over 50% in Canada. They'll be a little bit more normal in places like the US. But because of social minimum pricing, we have very high margins within Canada. We are also very much taking the model that we used here and reapplying that in other markets, which is one big customer. So as we enter markets in the US, we will not be entering those markets unless there is an anchor tenant, if you want, like a big liquor store chain that will suck up enough volume to make the logistics work. At that point, we don't want to burn up shoe leather going to every single mom and pop shop in the state. It's about getting one big customer that can actually handle enough volume that makes it efficient to deliver to them. And we also focus on off-premise. People are always asking, why are you not in certain bars and restaurants? It's very difficult to play in that game unless you have a whole suite of products and that business. We will have sort of marquee and signature on-premise clients, but typically more for sampling opportunities and picking the right ones, the ones that sort of reflect the quality values that we're trying to do with our brands. A little bit about sales direction. This is LCBO, rolling average sales, obviously heading in the right direction. The vodka has been growing rapidly over the last few years, especially Zirkova. You can see that the contribution to growth is almost entirely driven by Zirkova. And we've also come to a new stage in our development as a company where we've had 2 consecutive quarters of positive EBITDA. So we're aiming for a break even in 2015. And given the way the first quarter is turning up, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. We've had our best first quarter ever. Usually first quarter is terrible. It's after Christmas, everybody's trying to get their inventories down so they don't order anything and they don't want it to show up until after April 1st. So it stays off their books, but it's turned out rather well. A couple of accomplishments thus far for Zirkova. Zirkova is now the #1 continuously listed brand and LCBO vintages. So when you walk into the oak paneled area of the LCBO, look around you at everything that's on the shelves or the racks there, and this sells more than all of that. So it's the most important product for LCBO vintages. They've listed it that way because it's, quote, an ethnic product, but as it turns out, we end up being the biggest fish in that pond. So we've gotten pretty much ubiquitous distribution in the 300 or so LCBO outlets that you really want to be in. Slava sells about a little bit less than 1/3 of what Zirkova does in physical cases. It's a little bit more profitable, but it's still in the top 5 of deluxe vodkas in Ontario, and #3 in Saskatchewan, and we're hoping #2 by the end of, fairly soon in terms of the growth in Saskatchewan. It's been pretty spectacular. Small market. A little bit about our revenue and profit forecast. When you look at where we're going, this sort of breaks it down by case sales and region. So you see that, I'll use the laser pointer here. Canada, in terms of volume case sales, ends up being still more than half, but that's because a big chunk, that's all of the beer, wine, and other only happens in Canada. Lots of boxes, but less money. So when you look at it from dollar sales, it's still only a little bit less than half, and that's looking forward several years. So you can see as we grow, just a little bit of a dipping our toe in here in 2015, and then starting to see some growth from the US and other markets in the next, starting in 2016 and forward. And of course, you can see from here dollar sales almost entirely driven by the 2 vodka brands. The other brands become strictly ornamental and strategic for other reasons. This is a rather complicated looking look at gross profit going forward, but as we go past the break-even point, those margins really start to kick in. And as much as we have net income down here, we're looking at a break-even net income in 2015, but even this here shows we're taking a huge amount of that and reinvesting in marketing. You can see that's marketing spend as a percentage of revenue. So at some point, we start to invest even more heavily in marketing, because at that point, that's when you're starting to polish up the brands for the exit strategy. One of the biggest questions we always get right now is risk. What's going on in Ukraine? Kind of scary. There's a war going on with Russia next door. So the question we always get is, well, are you worried about that? How is that affecting you? I always very careful. I almost feel embarrassed to say this. But so far, it's actually affected us in only positive ways. We used to have to explain, a lot of people are trying to boycott Russian vodka we had to, no, ours isn't Russian, it's from Ukraine. Well, isn't that part of Russia? No, it's not. Now we don't have to make that explanation anymore. Putin's done it for us. It's very clear that Ukraine and Russia are different countries. And the conflict itself is actually contained to this area over here in the east. Artemivsk is where our sparkling wine comes from, so it's actually on the border. But this area used to be occupied. We still managed to ship it out for last Christmas, so it's not like we can't do business even in that environment. Our vodka is made here. That's almost the dead center of Ukraine, a long ways away from the conflict. Our beer comes from here and here, and our main shipping point right now is Odessa, but we also ship through Germany. So even if Odessa were to become a problem, there's still a way to get product out. Also, what's happened because of this conflict is Ukraine is on people's minds, particularly people of Ukrainian background. They're much more enthusiastic than they were about their heritage, and the people in Ukraine have really inspired them. They're fighting for their freedom and they're fighting for democracy, and that's really inspired a lot of people here. So they're much more interested in things Ukrainian, as are almost all people in Canada. So it's actually caused a sales increase. I mean, it's hard to say what causes the sales to go up, because vodka sales go up all the time. But we do know with the beer sales, they mysteriously went up starting last year, and there was no real explanation for it. It wasn't anything we did. So the last thing I can say about this is that Zolotonosha, where we make our vodka, the plant's been around since 1896, and they've gone through the First World War, the Russian Revolution, the beginning of the Soviet Union, Nazi occupation, the Second World War, the falling apart of the Soviet Union, the introduction of an independent Ukraine. This war, this is nothing compared to what they've gone through in the past. And guess what they've been doing for all 120 years, including in those times of war? They've been making vodka. You cannot separate Ukrainians or Russians or Poles or Belarusians from their vodka making. It just won't happen. So it's doing that. In terms of the key man stuff, we are insured quite well, both myself and Catherine, and we also carry a significant amount of product liability insurance just in case. So about the equity structure, how we're doing this is we've actually, and just recently, we set out to sell the remaining shares in the company, which was only about 3% of the equity was left. We've actually pretty much done that. So between Mike and a few other people who have invested, it was gone. We've pretty much sold all the equity. If there is sufficient interest in a group like today, what we will do is actually issue another 100,000 shares, making the total offering 500,000. The minimum investment is 25, as it has been for shareholders in the past. We currently have 38 shareholders in our group, so about 60% at current, and that will fall to 56 as founding shareholders. The rest of our angels who are already in are about 36%, so there will be a new issue as part of that group, and this number is actually now shrunk to almost zero as of a few days ago. So for myself and Catherine, we've sunk into the company about $250,000 and about 13 years of our lives, which has actually been fun, but so we bring along a significant skin in the game as well. In terms of what we're going to do with this, everything that I talked about earlier is something that we will do a lot faster. So this will enable us to go ahead and do all of these plans more quickly. So we're in the midst right now of a major rebranding effort with both Zirkova and Slava. So by the end of the year, you will not recognize either brand. It's going to be pretty spectacular. Some of the work that we've been working on in terms of vodka research and also with Canary, what you see is going to be quite amazing. So we're going to do that up. We're also going to invest more in marketing more quickly, so especially in new markets. So we can enter new markets more quickly as well, because as you might imagine, there is some working capital involved in that. As we go into new markets, we can do that more quickly as well. And that, of course, means that there's going to be some personnel issues as well. So that's where we would foresee using the funds going forward. So I'll finish off with exit strategy, and this is where we talk a little bit about the crazy, almost seemingly crazy valuations on brands that have sold in the past. And it all started in the early 2000s. Sky was the first one to go. This was an independent brand, and over time, Campari Group has slowly but surely bought them out, and they've paid a little bit over $500 million for the shares of Sky, which was an independent as well. Grey Goose was the really big eye popper. In 2004, They were doing maybe 1.6 million cases in sales, and they sold for $2.3 billion to Pucari. So when you do the math on these numbers, well, 42 Below was a little bit better example, smaller brand, 100,000 cases. They sold for 91 million US to Pucari as well. Kettle One was Diageo's answer to that. They saw what Pucari was doing, wanted to get into it. They bought about half of Kettle One from the Nolet family and paid 900 million for it, valuing that brand at 1.8 billion dollars. So when you start doing the math, how do you come up with these numbers? The only thing that's anywhere near consistent is a per case kind of volume number. So how much vodka are you selling? Because these companies look at it and think, once we take that independent brand and plug it into our network, the amount of growth that we can create is going to be astonishing. So for us, if we go into a US state and just have one chain store as our thing, they say, well, we'll fill in the rest of the blanks and we can triple or quadruple the sales in markets that you're already in. So they pay for that sort of thing. So in terms of creating a $100 million valuation for us, we took those numbers and made it way more conservative and just said, well, what if we were to create that kind of value, where would the sales be at? And in our business plan, they're actually a little bit north of that. So when we look at how do we get there, those numbers would drive these sorts of valuations. So when we're looking at is saying this is swinging for the fences, this is taking that bat and going for the home run and hoping for the big 10-bagger. That's what we're going after. A miss in that situation is still not half bad. We get 25% of that, and it's still a fairly decent business. But this is the big one. This is what we're going for. We want this. I want to be on my rocking chair on a porch someday and saying, "Your grandma and I, we started those brands," with that kind of thing. So have a legacy, so to speak, on that. When we talk about why our shareholders have invested in the past, there's a bunch of reasons. One is they're interested in the management team, like they look at who we put together and think that we can pull this off. The exit strategy is another thing. I mean, this has happened over and over again, actually. There's a bunch more. 40 Creek Whiskey just sold to Campari Group for $200 million just recently, mostly in Canada, but they have a presence in the US. So the exit strategies are there. The quality of the products is something you'll have a chance to experience later. That really gets a lot of people, especially people who are passionate about vodka or Caesars. They just want to own a piece of that. Honestly, there's a bunch of our 38 that just want to tell their friends they own a piece of a vodka business. And they really love that. It's just, to them, it's cool, it's fun. They get to go to certain events and things like that they wouldn't otherwise go to. It's a lot of fun. The business plan is pretty sound. We have a stepwise approach. We've used it here in Ontario. We're going to use it over and over again. And finally, it's kind of a unique opportunity. There aren't that many chances to play at this game. The majority of these brands are owned by big, huge multinational companies. So for people looking to play in this space, there just aren't that many options. So that's one of the things that's there. So that's where I'll leave it and let you hit me with some questions.
John, thank you very much for a fascinating presentation. You provided a lot of context about your business, but also the industry and the area as well. So I really appreciate that. I'm sure that there'll be questions from the floor, and I'll let you moderate them. Thank you.
Great, thanks.